Process by gathering the views of Nigerians on constitutional issues, including governance structure, women's inclusion, devolution of powers, state policing, electoral reforms, local government autonomy, state creation, among others. So what is the priority of the state in the amended constitution? Before we begin, a section of Enugu residents speak. Let's take a look.
The expectation is that it will go well. Because Nigeria is completely total gaga. We are not moving out. It's like we are on a flat tire, simply because we don't have a constitution that really, gives us, space to operate. A referendum is supposed to be part of the constitution, so that if people are tired of, what is happening in this country, they can now, conduct a referendum and then opt out.
Very excited when I heard it because it's very good that we touch our constitution, because many things has been going out of hand. We need to reshuffle things. We need amendments so we can be able to move forward in this nation. That people will be allowed to say their mind. Yeah, because in this country we are being led like animals. Okay, so but it's very good that we allow people's opinion. This myself kind of politics, particular people being in the leadership of the nation for a very long time, that we really need to touch it.
I don't really see anything coming out of it. You understand? It's just they are doing it just for the purpose of doing it. At the end of the day, they will still do what they want to do. You understand? And for me, what I think we need an overhaul of our constitution, complete overhaul of our constitution. We don't need to review it. You understand? This constitution was given to us by the military. This review, for me, it's haphazard way of solving this issue of our constitution. We really need to elect people who come to a constitutional conference and deliberate and get a new constitution for Nigeria.
It has been awaiting for years. Some states we are meant to be added. If they could do it and do it orderly, probably Southeast need more 3 states. Because other states, other regions, we have 6 geopolitical regions. Other regions we have been marginalized. We Southeast have been marginalized. Others have 6 states. It's only we Southeast that have 5 states. So if they can make the resource control equal, after all, the Southeast and South-South are the people getting the major resources the country is using.
I mean, the part of constitution I want the government to touch is an area of fundamental human rights. Fundamental human rights. This should be one thing you have to notice, that we have good laws, but the problem is implementation. In the new constitution that should be reformed, there should be steep penalty for people that violate the constitution. The constitution should be followed succinctly, and the provision should be strictly implemented. And no matter whose ox is God, this constitution is not a respecter of anybody. Therefore, anybody who goes contrary to the constitution, there should be other laws method for such people, and it must be carried out. Whether the person is president, whether this person is a common man. Therefore, everybody has equal right to obey the constitution and be.
On today's show, the spotlight will turn to women's inclusion in the proposed review, the Reserved Seats for Women bill. This is Enugu KWENU. I am Nathalie Ugwu. Good evening.
Hey ladies, join us on Gyno Plus every Wednesday at 6 p.m. right on Africa TV, DSTV channel 254 and GoTV channel 17, where we will delve
Welcome back. The program is Enugu KWENU, live from Enugu, Nigeria. I'm Nathalie once again. And like we said, we're discussing the Constitution review that is coming up in just a few days. That will be hosted for the Southeast Zone in Enugu. I'm joined now in the studio by Ambassador Onyinye Mama, who is the President, Women Support Women for Human Empowerment and Mentorship Initiative. Good morning. Good morning. Good evening.
Thank you, Nathalie.
Perks of the Morning Show. And also with her, Dr. Adaora Sydney-Jack, who is a Deputy Chief Whip. No, she's not. Deputy Chief, we'll correct that. Dr. Adaora, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
All right. So let's jump into this right now. People have been calling for restructuring. People have been calling for a new constitution. People are calling for an all-round overhaul of the constitution. Could you please tell me where you stand on this? Are you just calling for one thing, or you want an entirely new constitution altogether?
All right, my name is Dr. Adaora Sydney-Jack. I am the Southeast Zonal Coordinator for the Reserved Seats Bill.
That's the Southeast Zonal Coordinator for the Reserved Seats Bill. Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely. First, I will speak as a citizen and as a Nigerian. And I think that if you look at the Constitution and the way that it is shaped, it begins with we, the people of Nigeria. However, when you look at the intricacies that define the Constitution and look at the democracy that we inhabit, you would realize that a lot of people seemingly feel unmapped by voices, by representation, by participation. And that is not because we do not have a constitution that works, but we do not have a constitution that seems to represent inclusion. And so when you're talking about reformation, you're thinking about refining how the voices are placed. It then now becomes important for us to look at mapping the constitutional review amendment and how and those sections are supposed to benefit not just the Nigerian citizens, but from Nigeria to the Committee of Nations and as a representation of Africa at the global stage. And so now we are talking about judicial reforms. We're talking about electoral reforms. We're talking about separation of powers. We're talking about devolution of powers. We're also looking at policing, state policing. We're looking at state creation. We're looking at inclusive governance. So in total, you're looking at a constitution that seems to look at every citizen as a stakeholder. And I think that is why it's important for us to own this process. And so speaking as a Southeast Zonal Coordinator, I would now bring it down to the fact that when you're thinking inclusion, you're thinking the Constitution, you're also thinking at the currency of the demography, which is, of course, when you talk about women.
Right.
And that is where I want to lay it down first, because inclusion is what defines democracy, and democracy is what activates the Constitution.
That's right. Okay, Onyinye, would you like to weigh in on that? Your stand on the Constitution and the issues that you hope perhaps this reform would rebirth?
Okay, so there are about 5 sections in the Constitution that needs to be looked at. I think there's section 38, 24, 18, and I think between 46 and 47 that concentrates on how we should decentralize power, make sure that everybody becomes a voice, and further inclusivity in all that we do in governance. So this is time, and this is time. Not just that it's time, the time is getting even late for us at this age in the 21st century to still be widely clamoring for the inclusion of women, where we should be talking about what women have achieved long ago in governance. I was in Rwanda and I saw things that baffled me. I looked at the head of the parliament, a young woman who I was older than, and lots of other supportive women sitting in the parliament, and it wasn't even as if they were being favored. The country believed in what they can bring to the table, and then I could measure it up with Nigeria, and I tell myself, 21st century Nigeria should have gone further than this.
All right, so let's talk about the reserved seats for women bill. Some people have heard this before, some might be hearing it for the first time. So could you walk us through, Dr. Adaora, what this truly stands for? Break it down for us.
All right, so I would say that the additional seats for women's bill, the SB 440, as it's tabled on the Constitutional Amendment Review document, talks about a bill for an act to alter the provisions of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria in 1999 to provide additional seats for women in the parliament, that is the National Assembly, and at the state assembly level and other related matters. And so they're looking at the section 77, subsection 1, they're looking at section 177 and amongst others. Now, what does this bill seek to do? It seeks to reserve a seat for women, 1 seat per senatorial district per state, 1 seat per House of Representatives and constituents per state, and 3 seats at the state assembly level. Altogether, we're looking at 74 extra seats. This bill does not stop the women from running for the other seats, as it seems, and it does not take away the seats from the men. It is an all-women-only seat, where only women are required to run for that seat only, across political parties. Ab initio, this bill was first placed and brought to the fore in 2022, and it was brought under the related matters called the 5 gender bills as extra seats bill. Then we were asking for 111 seats. It was sponsored by Right Honorable Nkiru Konya-Jocha and Femi Gbajabiamila, who was the speaker at the time, and others. However, it failed. After the presentation, women demanded. However, the 3 that were rescinded were not one of the bills that were in demand, which is the extra seat bill. That was the 9th Assembly. Now we are in the 10th Assembly. And in this 10th Assembly, 9th Assembly, they said the women didn't lobby, we didn't consult, we didn't have collaborative energy with the parliaments and at the local. But in the 10th Assembly, the Right Honorable Benjamin Kalu, who is the Deputy Speaker of the House of Representatives, now is sponsoring the bill, and he's a man, and by 12 others who are co-sponsoring it. And it has seen enormous support and endorsement from the President of the Senate to the executive, the governor's wives, governor's spouses forum, and young Nigerians in mass supporting this bill. So at this moment, what we are looking at, the reserved seats bill for women, is that it is not a women's only bill. It is a bill for Nigeria, because when women are on the policy table, what we seem to get is development, sustainability, and that is what the reserved seats bill for women seeks to do.
All right, we're going to come back to this conversation, but first we want a quick break now. Enugu KWENU returns in just a minute. Stay with us. Welcome back to the program. We're still on to Enugu KWENU, and we still have Onyinye Mama here. I'm going to throw this question to right now. What would you say is the picture of representativeness right now at the state level and the federal level for women? How does it exist within the current 1999 Constitution?
All right, so, the picture, it's all glaringly very poor. At the state houses of assembly, we have about 3.6, ownership of seats there. At the Senate, the same volume, and globally, it's still between 7.2, and it's really, really poor, right? If we had taken a nudge out of what it used to be, maybe close to something 35% affirmative, we would have given ourselves a pat on the back to say, yes, we've climbed. Okay, using Enugu as a case study, we declined from 4 in the State House of Assembly to 2. We went from having a woman as the deputy governor to not having a woman at all. We went from having lots of women as figureheads in the political circle into having very few. But fortunately in this regime, we have like 50 women who are appointees. But you believe me that appointees are, they're exclusively reserved for the person who is appointing them.
Right.
So we're looking at women coming to where they will stand, sit, and decide in the same volume with the men. So the picture is really very poor, and I think we need to do a whole lot around bringing women. You know, the picture I always paint is we are not favoring women by bringing them to the table. You see, these women have multitasked for so many years of their lives as workers, as church workers, as wives, as, you know, people in the society, and they have lived up to expectation. Why do you think that people with the same volume of capacity and ability cannot do much more further in the governing circle? So, I mean, there's a whole bag of deceits to all of these political intrigues that will find bedeviling, you know, the Nigerian sector and politics. So, chauvinism and patriarchy is really fanning the space for men to let us in, because they know what women bring to the table. You will agree with me, Natalie, that no person would explain pain more than a woman. So when you tell a woman that a child is hungry or poverty is eating up a place, that woman really thinks about a child and envisions a family. And in that same sense, she comes to lead.
Okay.
So she will think about bringing everything
to
its importance.
Okay, let's come back to you now, Dr. Adaora. You are the Southeast Zonal Coordinator. How is this being received among the Southeasterners? Tell us about that.
I think, first of all, I want to say the public hearing that is coming.
Yes, we're going to get to that.
Yes, in terms of the fact that the reserve seat bill is coming at this time. Remember, electioneering fever is already being muted. People are trying to consult, and alignments are happening. It is happening at a time where there is heightened interest in political representation. And so the conversation is diverse, both from women, from men, from young people. And it is so significant because what then it does is that it brings it to the forefront and on the table as a defining factor, not just for our democracy, but for the kind of election that we will be seeing come 2027. Remember that the reserve seat bill, as often muted, you know, is supposed to be reserved for women. But remember that women bring longevity, like she mentioned, in terms of development, in terms of sustainability. And I dare say that for the first time in history, the 10th Parliament, through the leadership of, you know, Tajuddin Abbas, the Right Honourable Speaker, the Deputy Speaker who is leading the reserve seat bill, and that of the President of the Senate, of course, His Excellency Godswill Akpabio, is looking at putting efforts to walking their talk, to going from political promissory notes to activation. And it is seen in the fact that in the space that we have seen the Constitution review amendment process, they have decided to put this at the front burner, engaging civil society, engaging women. And so what has happened is that for the first time in a long time, young people, young women are interested. It is taking an organic movement where you're seeing videos that are popping up. People are saying, I want this reserve seat bill to work because I have 5 daughters. I want this reserve seat bill to work because my mom deserves a seat at the table. She has been in the space.
So another key question now, I'd like to come in there, would be what kind of seats would the woman get? What would be the position of such a seat? Is it enough to ask for a seat at the table? Where would the seat be placed?
So this is a table, we're all seated here. And I dare say sometimes if they don't give you a seat, bring one along. Because trust me, some tables can only factor 2 people, but you have to also bring one along. And so we are bringing one along to the table. And that is what the reserve seats bill does. You know, she talked about misogyny and patriarchy. And I was just looking at the video while you were speaking, you know, vis-a-vis when she was speaking. And all I could see was a head bob of men. You know, it's a boys' club. You cannot deny us that. And the truth of the matter is that because it's been a boys' club for so long, patriarchy has allowed itself to normalize, even within the political, you know, hierarchy. So in terms of bringing the seats to the table and what kind of seats the women will have, it is showing that the reserve seats bill for women not only presents a seat, but presents a presence for women in policy direction, in policy making, and activating implementation. I would say to you, and I will say this clearly, that oftentimes, the conversation around women's participation may not be one of, you know, exclusion. It could be one of ignorance. And that's why conversations like this are so important, because what it does is that it takes it off the table from, just the living rooms and into the social spaces and the community. I will give you an example. This morning we were on an earlier radio program, and a man did call in and say women should be under men. And it has always been defined. He quoted a section in the Bible to even back up his claim. But we were able to help educate him, to let him understand that just as women are under men, the same Bible said women are the neck. They support side by side. God took the rib out of Adam. And so what we are trying to say is that religious notions will come into this. The dynamics of tradition will come into this. Even acculturation and socialization will come into this. And so what we need to do is that we need to let people understand that we are not just empowering women for women's sake or the sake of X and Y chromosome. We are empowering women because they are human beings, because women's rights are human rights.
I like how you ended that, Dr. Adaora. Let's come back to you now, Onyemama. People will be asking one question now. Can women function effectively with the current constitution, even if amended? Like I started the show with, people are asking for a brand new constitution. One of the Enugu residents even pointed to an overhaul of the whole constitution. He said it boldly, he wants a total overhaul of the constitution. So let's face reality. Can women be their best with all the other clauses seemingly in the existing constitution?
All right, so women are humans first, and flaws naturally attributed to human beings. That we are converging and, advocating for more women does not outrightly spell us to come as champions and the best in humans. What we're saying is let's all sit there, face the storm together, swim out of the wild wind together, and see what we can do a lot more better. So Nigeria is blessed.
Bless you, go ahead.
Excuse me. Nigeria is blessed with policies, promulgations, decrees, acts. So a total overhauling of the constitution does not outrightly spell implementation. What we're saying at the moment is bring women on the decision-making tables and let them flow for a while. You see, I've seen countries that are led by women. I've seen heads of states that are women. Okay, Natalie, you could also be relieved from your own house, how your own mother has been leading the family. And you tell me that such a woman, it's not credible enough to lead in a bigger space. I mean, so what's the calculation and metrics about if these people have always been in charge of the circles where they operate? So they, they come up with this bias, this public bias of women will have troubles, they will not vote themselves. And I tell them, men also don't vote themselves. The recent trouble in the society now is being converged by men. Parties are forming factions, alliances. They are saying, I was listening to a broadcast on air. Somebody was saying this particular party is already dead and collapsed. There's no need. Somebody is secretary and all of that. These are men battering and throwing tantrums. So, but when it comes to a woman, there's this cloth that will wear women, and we elaborate it and make it look so huge. Troubles and weaknesses are human factors. It's not exclusively reserved for women. So I tell people that we're saying women should come up. Does not mean that Jesus is coming up. It means that someone needs to make a trial, fail and improve. So let's stop seeing women from this lens of, okay, are you saying you'll be better than a man? Of course, if she's better, that's a credit. Are you saying that you do better than a man? Everybody can try and everybody can succeed. So it's about being human first, and not what the gender has attributed to us.
Great. Dr. Adaora, now people have seen a lot of antecedents at the Senate. They've seen what's happened to Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. They've seen how Senator Weboy lashed out at Ezekwesili. They've seen so much happening. How is this going to encourage women to even want a seat at the table, even if they had to carry theirs?
Okay, so basically, first things first, is the fact that the absence of number currency increases its exclusion. And that is what is happening at the parliament. Imagine that we had, more voices for women, more rallying around collaborative efforts. You cannot equate 4 women against how many senators? There are 109 and you just have 4. You have 360 House of Representatives as members. You just have 15 as women. And so you look at the number equation, it is unbalanced, it's unfair, and it doesn't speak to equity. And so when women hear about this bill, the first thing that comes to mind is, how do we get on board and how do we mobilize? How do we advocate? And regardless of the metrics of political gaming and all the intrigues happening at the National Assembly, I can tell you that it speaks more to the need of women in the space. And not just at the parliament, even within political party structuring. Remember that this bill is only seeking as a temporary measure of 4 election cycles, which is 16 years. And after 16 years, it will be reviewed to see at least how the efforts have seen more women get into the political space, not just as parliamentarians, but active political participators. And so I say that the call for the reserve seats bill for women speaks to activation of women's interest, especially those with capacity and those with the genuine interest in seeing women's voices mapped in representative position. If you look at the ministerial appointments as well, even though it may not be much, but the president has also given his word at the last democracy joint session on live television that come December 2025, he wants to see the reserve seat bill and wants to see that bill passed. And so that's a charge. And again, you have seen the office of the speaker, deputy speaker, moving with this motion. So to them, they understand how this places us at the Inter-Parliamentary Union when they go for meetings and they see women at those international forums and they do not have women representing us. It speaks to them. I know that they have spoken about it privately and have been seeing the metrics as people will equate to Nigeria 39 out of 39 in global rankings when it comes to women's representation, yet we are sort of, in quote unquote, giant of Africa. The president is the chairperson, the chairman of ECOWAS, the Economic Community of West African States. And so you're talking about Africa as the giant when it comes to population currency, where half of this population are women, votable, and also voters. So we cannot have them on the currency of voting and as voters, but we will say to them, you cannot be voted for. So what this bill seeks to do is that it dismantles the socialization of women's inclusion in politics and in representation, so that the next generation of girls can dream to lead and believe it.
Okay, thank you so much. So we're going to go on a quick break now, and when Enugu KWENU returns, we're going to begin an insight on the public hearing, finding out what to expect, how can we all be a part of it, so to speak. Like we said earlier, it starts on Friday up until Saturday at the Enugu International Conference Centre. So we'll be joined by Honorable Princess Obiajulu Ugwu. She'll come and tell us exactly how we can all be a part of this public hearing. Enugu KWENU returns in just moments. Stay tuned.
They say we're just traders. But have you met the Igbo innovator challenging the tech space here in Africa? Or the woman leading the construction space? Or the young man who has decided to turn this region into a tourist haven? This is about the dreamers, the doers,
informed. Oftentimes, people they don't get information. We just stay on the street and scream, and we don't leverage on the rights, on the powers that we have. For instance, there's a FOI, the Freedom of Information Act, that allows you to write. I remember I worked with a civil society organization, and several times I'd written to different government parastatals for their budgets, and they obliged me. But most times we don't do these things. We need to engage. We need to get information, get to know the bills, know the ones that they are seeking to alter, know what we feel that should be. There's a place that they can be saying maybe 20 years imprisonment for someone who doesn't vote. And the citizens, if they don't know about it, you let it pass. And you wouldn't even know that when you don't vote that you're liable to go to 20 years imprisonment. But if you have the information handy, you can now know what you are, what your input will be to what you deserve and what you desire.
Yes.
If you're not going to be able to, bring it in as an individual, you can also look around and see organizations or committees that are putting up memorandums, that have the right to put up memorandums for this constitution review, and you can chip in your ideas to this those committees. Then if we all sit at home and want to look at Afia TV when on the day of the hearings, public hearings, we're not going to get anything done. It is better you come firsthand, seated in the ICC. It's happening 10 o'clock every day for the 2 days, Friday and Saturday. That's Friday 4th and Saturday 5th. And it is open for everyone. And you can even do as much as, if you think that your own won't be heard, bring up a placard and say, oh, in this agriculture, in the review that has to do with agriculture, these are my thoughts. Put it out. I know Afia TV, I trust them to capture such things, and even other media houses. So we're calling out on everyone. If you are in Enugu and you're not from Enugu, you're from the southeast, Anambra, Ebonyi, Imo, Abia, please, this is your bill. You need to come and make your input, your own input. Don't sit at home and wait for, it is their thing, let them do it. Please, it is no longer their thing. It is our general thing. The bills are for the people.
People need to understand that this is not an Enugu thing. It's happening across the southeast. Enugu is just hosting this. So let's come back to you now, Dr. Adaora. People will be asking questions like, what is the point of going, of even thinking of going there? I'm sure they're going to select the participants that they think should be there. They'll be wondering how the participants will be selected. Are they going to have some people that will raise their hands and ask or propose something new? They don't feel as if they're really going to be represented, feeling that Nigeria is not a country that would stand by that word. What do you have to say to that?
I think that is perhaps a little pessimistic, because like you just mentioned, it will be happening zonally. For the North Central, it will be happening in Plateau. For the Northwest, it will be happening in Kano. For the Northeast, it will be happening in Maiduguri. For the South-South, it will be happening in Akwa Ibom. For the Southwest, it will be happening in Lagos. And then for the Southeast, it is happening in Enugu. Now, I would like to also perhaps explain the program of events so that they will understand how to key into the participation. From 8:30 to 9:30, guests and participants who are interested need to come earlier than that so that they can be seated in the hall. Remember, the ICC can only take quite a number, and those who don't come early may not get seats in reservation. So you need to come early. And then from 9:30 to 9:45, the committee members, that is the Senate committee members, are seated and, getting raring to go. And then from 9:45 to 10 a.m., arrival of special guests. Maybe that could be the president of the Senate or the person chairing the committee. And then from 10 a.m. to 10:45, we have opening ceremony, national anthem, and opening address, goodwill messages, etc., etc. And if perhaps the governor is very magnanimous to show up, he could also be speaking, and I'm sure it is something of interest. And then from 10:45 to 11:15, we have a tea break. 11:15 to 12:30, presentations start and continuously go on. And then we would have the lunch between 2 p.m. to 2:30, where people can break away and have some recess. And then from 2:30 to 5 p.m., proceedings and presentations continue. So it starts officially from 10 to 5 every day. However, sitting commences from 8:30 in the morning. So that means that if organizations are there on time, it's going to be first come, first, seat approach. So if you come there by 6 and you're able to muscle the whole entire front seat, fantastic. If you come by 10 and there is no seat, you will chuck your head inside the hall and participate from an angle. So again, that is to show you how deliberate they have been in making sure that this agenda, the programs are rolled out in time. It's an all-inclusive, exercise. It is not an afterthought adventure where somebody is put on the spot and say, oh, only this specific number of persons are brought. That is why it's called the public hearing, because it is for the masses, it is for the community. And so I am calling on the women, the men, the teachers, the artisan, the politicians, the medical practitioners, the lawyers, the students, the lettered and the literate and those who are still aiming to go into university and on. It is for everybody. Persons with disability, women with disability, this is your time to come and speak out. The reserve seat bill for women and all the other bills are Nigerians' template for policy redirection. And if you put your voice to it, I can tell you that this 10th parliament has a political will by actually making it open. And so they need to maximize it so that the accountability is cross-border. It is not just us holding leadership accountable, but it's also holding our voices accountable and bringing it to account.
I mean, that very well said, very well said. So let's come back to you, Honorable Obiajulu. People now watching this program would just be wondering why nobody is talking about the language of the Constitution. It sometimes can be confusing for many people. It's legal terms. It's, I understand that the law has to be far-reaching. The long arm of the law, they say, will always catch you. That's why there are lots of, why isn't anybody talking about simplifying this language? There is no ambiguity, and everybody, you talked about understanding, so that everybody can understand and really get a grip of what the Constitution is saying. Is that even possible?
Okay, so the language of the Constitution, like I told you when I spoke the first time, most times people they've not even tried to assess the Constitution. So they don't even know what the language is like. Some of us don't even know what the language is like. It's not what you know that you now begin to say, okay, this is not okay how it is. But for now, we have people who their job most of the time is to interpret the law, the Constitution. But I will say it is one step at a time. This is another issue that you're raising right now. And it's giving me a sense, just because I can understand what is written in that Constitution, it's not very easy for everybody out there. But we must start from one step first. We'll count one, then we'll count two. This is what we're looking at for now, the review. Yes. After this review, maybe there will be another review soon. And then we want people to now begin to talk about truly the language of the Constitution.
Now let's come to you. You are already in the system. You are one of 2 women in the Enugu State House of Assembly. You have been waxing strong. You have been carrying up your TV along in every other thing that's been going on. What's it like for you? And why do you think it's essential that this seat is reserved?
Now, I will say that this seat, this reserved seat bill for women is specifically for me because it is going to strengthen me. If I have more sisters in the house, it's just me and one person, I will always make this reference. And so there is something to vote on. Say menstrual hygiene for menstrual towels for public schools for students. You can be very sure that if it is put on a vote, that most likely just myself and the second female in the house will be the only people voting for that particular bill, while the other 22 will vote against. They are not voting against because they don't want it to pass, but they don't understand what it entails, why we should do that, because they don't see, period. They don't know what it is like. They can say sorry to their friend or their wife or their daughter who is going through menstrual cramps. They may not even want to know what it is that you do to hold, the blood flow and everything. But it is the woman who understands. So this reserved seat bill, for me, will bring us to having enough strength, enough voice when it comes to gender responsive bills and laws in the House.
Do you think you have a voice right now in the House?
Of course I have a voice, but it's going to be a tiny voice. If we're asked to shout in the House and it is just me and the other female representative shouting, you can be sure that it's just like when you come to the churches and you say, women, praise God. You will hear women echo. Yeah. Say children, praise God. You will hear the echo. Just say men, praise God. You will understand whether I have a voice or I don't. Yes, I have a voice, but the voice is not speaking out as loud as it should or as it will speak when I have other female voices joined to mine.
I mean, that paints a clear picture. Dr. Adaora, let's come to you. How positive are you that this bill is going to be passed into law?
Well, I think for me, I have already seen the end of this conversation as when Nigerian women are rejoicing. They're walking out in their mass, they're holding hands, and there is there's people crying, there are people laughing, there are people ecstatic. I see this bill as a history-making bill, a legacy-shaping bill, not just for the 10th Assembly, but for Nigeria in the Committee of Africa, for the Nigerian women. And I say this begins the healing journey because we are broken on fragment lines, and the trauma of exclusion, you may not know how deep it has got. It has cost communities from being developed. It has cost families from having girl children go to school. It has cost a lot of conversations when it comes to power broking, where women are left out on the table. And again, it will bring the conversation on the language you talked about. Because when you look at the Constitution as a document, in modern democracies, constitutions are used for power broking amongst the dynamics because it is meant to be an inclusive literature. But for Nigerian Constitution, the pronoun he was used 235 times in the Constitution. And so that makes it engendered to male, to masculinity. And so going back to what the Right Honourable said earlier, there is a conversation ongoing, but we'll also find a leap if more women are in Parliament, where the committees on legislation, committees on ethics and principle, all the different committees set up to review the Constitution may start looking at the literature and how that defines inclusivity in the rest of the world for Nigeria. So that's a conversation that will be had. But until we have women on the table, until we have the reserved seats bill for women, we may just be going 360 degrees around the conversation. Remember, other African countries have tried this. Rwanda, Namibia, South Africa, Senegal, they have all been on the table talking quota. And I think that it is time to look inwards and say, are we really definitive when it comes to being the giant of Africa, when our women are left out of the conversations that merit that democracy?
Is there a limit to the number of bills that can be amended, or number of laws that can be amended this time around? Is there any limit, or can a lot of them be done? Is there a limit?
So at the moment we have 70 bills presented for review, for amendment, which will all be tabled. Right? Yes, it's still expanded, but these are the first 70. And they can all, I mean, if you have enough consensus supporting the bill, and there are enough arguments, and there is enough mobilization, all the bills can pass. However, there are also priority bills because there are some that define us as a nation, and that comes to inclusion. And that comes to the reserve seat bill for women. Yes. And that is why there is so much, mobilization, interest, both politically and socially. Civil society have had several layers of conversation, other women groups, other mobilization around women organizations, women-led organizations, and even men have also rallied around it. Even the persons with disability community have also said, we too have a voice to run. We too have a stake in politics. We must also be acknowledged in the process. And so, whilst we are also thinking about women, they're also the minority within the minority. And that community is the community of women with disability. So it's an all-inclusive bill.
Okay, so now we're looking at a case of everybody battling for time to get their voices heard. And I'll throw it back to you, Honorable Obiajulu, because you're talking about voices here and how loud voices can be. Now you have bills such as the one trying to propose state police. You have the one for state creation, rather controversial bills that would keep people talking for a very long time. What is the guarantee that people who are standing for the reserved seats for women bill will get enough time to really argue out their stand when you have such other controversial debates around it? So many men wanting to get the arguments out there.
Okay, so it mustn't be verbally. For you to make your contributions or your arguments, your debates about a bill, it must not be verbally. When we have public hearings, it's usually a startup, like a kick for the public input into the bill. Oftentimes you will hear, bring in your contributions, your submissions in soft copies to emails that will be provided wherever, in hard copies too, and they will all be incorporated, because it doesn't end with just doing the public hearing. After the public hearing, the committee goes back and begins to collect all the inputs. So there's usually time for people who don't get to, to voice or to debate. There's usually time for them to follow up and add their voice. So if you are not able to, and you can't say you will not be able to, except you're there on ground. Be there first, see what was discussed, and see if you need to make an amendment to what you have, and you can still send it in.
Now, in terms of, we're looking at a case where people are coming to discuss heated matters of national significance. What is security going to be like? Would there be need for accreditation? Can everybody walk in there and be a part of this?
Every person who is a citizen. It is a public hearing. You need to come early and secure a space. And if you don't get a space, you can also look in through the window and listen to what is happening because definitely everybody cannot be in the hall. But depending on how important it is for you, you will try to, when something is important to you, you know how to go about getting it.
All right. Any final words, Dr.
Yes, so several events have happened to shape us getting to those public hearings. So maybe perhaps I share that, and so that you can see the activities that happen. So from the June 20th, we started with a diplomatic dinner across at the National. We also, from July 4th to 5th, we're here for the public hearing. 11th to 13th, public hearing in the 3 northern geopolitical zones. And then we would also be having those for the House of Representatives in the Southeast from July 18th to 20th for the House of Reps for the public hearing. July 14th, meetings with political parties. July 21st, the national public hearing for the FCT will be happening in Abuja. And then from the 23rd, meetings with Nigerian Governors Forum on the same bill and the same level of conversations across the bill. And then July 28th to 29th, meeting with media executives. September 25th to 28th, there will be joint committee meetings with Senate and the Conference of Speakers to harmonize and adopt the bills ready for presentation on the floor. And then for 14th October, voting in plenary. October 16th to 19th, Secretariat retreat to clean up copies of the bill that has been passed. And so 30th October, transmission of bills to State Houses of Assembly. And by December, we will now know whether all the bills have been passed
or not. All right. Honorable Obiajulu, any final words before we wrap this up?
Always, my final word will be, this is for us, the people. Please, people, across board, across all sectors, please come in for this public hearing. I'd like to thank the proposer of this bill. We were shut out in 2022. That was women who moved for it, and right now a man is pushing for it. We cannot overemphasize our gratefulness to the man who decided to lead this delegation on this reserve bill, which is Right Honorable Benjamin Carlo. I pray that other men too out there will become his for she and support this bill.
I like the sound of that, his for she. All right, so you're going to continue this, you're going to continue to go to the different zones as this hearing
Absolutely.
Good. I wish you God strength as you go on.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to the very end of Enugu KWENU. Today is going to be a busy double day, we can call it that, Friday and Saturday. We had with us Dr. Adaora Sydney-Jack, Southeast Zonal Coordinator, Reserved Seats for Women Bill, and Honorable Princess Obiajulu Ugwu, Chairperson, Southeast Reserved Seats Bill Delegation Committee. She's also the Deputy Chief Whip of the Enugu State House of Assembly. We hope to see you there on Friday. Afia TV will definitely be there capturing you as you reel out those opinions of yours ahead of this transformation for our 1999 Constitution. I've been your host as always, Nathalie Uku. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.